My name was Ibrahim. I was a doctor, respected, wielding a scalpel in the bustling corridors of an ICU in New York. I thought I had mastered the delicate balance between life and death. Every day, I healed, I guided, and I prayed. Yet, beneath this facade of devotion lay a tumultuous sea of doubt, an emptiness cloaked in my adherence to a faith that had begun to feel more like a prison than a path to enlightenment. I would often find myself questioning during my prayers, wondering if there was more to existence than the rituals I diligently followed. Then one fateful night, everything changed. A tragic incident plunged me into an abyss I had never anticipated, a near-death experience that shattered my understanding of reality. In that dark void, I encountered a blinding light, and there he stood, Jesus. He called my name, forging a connection that transcended language, creed, and even time. In that moment, I grasped the horrors hidden within the very systems I had devoted my life to, a spiritual war raging around us, unseen yet palpable. Returning to my life was a battle of its own. My new beliefs brought fear and rejection. My family labeled me a heretic, casting me out from the community that once embraced me. The weight of guilt bore down heavily on my shoulders, and I found myself torn between allegiance to my past and the radical freedom that Jesus offered. I was no longer just a doctor. I was a man on a mission, a witness called to expose the truth that had been revealed to me. In my quest for understanding, I turned to the Bible, devouring its words while grappling with the fear of losing everything I had ever known. Yet within the pages, I found a new community, a place where love and acceptance flourished beyond the confines of culture. Each encounter emboldened my spirit, pushing me closer to a life fully embracing this truth I had discovered. Now I stand at a crossroads, realizing my experience was not just for me, but a divine commission to share this truth, one that shocks, transforms, and liberates. Today, I invite you to join me in this journey of spiritual awakening. Together, we can uncover the hidden layers of our existence that so often remain untouched. Before we delve deeper, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? Your journey is vital to this conversation. And if you love Jesus and are ready to dive into the revelations of faith, subscribe to Truth from Beyond, because together, we're on the brink of something extraordinary, and I promise you, the truth is far more dangerous and beautiful than you can imagine. The atmosphere inside the bustling hospital in New York was thick with tension. As a doctor working in the ICU, I was accustomed to the relentless pressure, the frantic pace, and the emotional weight that came with caring for patients whose lives hung in the balance. My name is Amir, and while I felt a deep commitment to my medical profession, I also carried the burden of a spiritual unrest that had quietly festered within me for years. Each day presented new challenges, but internally, I was grappling with questions about faith, purpose, and the very nature of life and death. One fateful evening, my world shifted dramatically. After a particularly exhausting shift, I found myself standing by the bedside of a critically ill patient. The monitors beeped steadily, and the sterile smell of antiseptic surrounded me. As I worked, I felt a sudden wave of dizziness wash over me. Everything faded into darkness. In that moment of unconsciousness, I was thrust into an otherworldly void, where the familiar sounds of the hospital were replaced by an overwhelming silence. And then, out of that silence, light broke through like the dawn over a dark horizon. As clarity returned, I found myself standing in the presence of Jesus, radiant and illuminating. His eyes were filled with compassion, and I felt a deep connection that transcended earthly understanding. "Amir," he said gently, and in that moment my soul felt recognized. It was a profound revelation, one that cut through the layers of doubt and fear that had clouded my spirit. Jesus began to speak to me about the spiritual war we are all engaged in, a battle for our souls against deception that is woven into the very fabric of society. He revealed truths that shattered my previous beliefs. The hidden agenda of the elite came to light, right before my eyes. I witnessed how religious and political systems manipulate the masses, feeding on fear and discontent to maintain control. The vision expanded, showing me the schisms within communities, the wars fueled by the ignorance of the powerful, and the suffering that stemmed from misguided loyalty to oppressive structures. It was shocking to realize how easily the narratives we accept can become chains that bind us, obscuring our ability to connect with the divine truth that lies beneath. As I returned from this extraordinary encounter, returning to the dim lights of the ICU, I felt a surge of purpose. The urgency of Jesus' message weighed heavily on my heart. I now understood that my life had a greater calling, one that involved awakening others to the truths I had witnessed. But with that purpose came a daunting fear. Would my colleagues and community accept me after this awakening? Would I be viewed as an outcast for sharing my transformation? Each step I took felt laden with the risk of loss, yet I couldn't ignore the responsibility that came with the revelation. I had to find a way to blend my role as a healer with the deeper mission to guide others through the spiritual war that pervaded our reality, illuminating the path toward awakening, even in the face of adversity. My name is Ibrahim, and at 35 years old, I've built a respectable life as a doctor in one of New York's busiest hospitals. I work long hours in the ICU, where every day presents new challenges and emotional highs and lows. On the surface, I appear dedicated and committed to my faith, practicing Islam in a country filled with diversity and complexity. However, beneath that polished exterior lies a profound emptiness that shakes me to my core. Despite my professional achievements and the admiration of my peers, I find myself grappling with deep questions about my faith and the very purpose of my existence. While I guide others through moments of vulnerability and pain, I feel the constant weight of my internal struggle. Prayer has become a ritual rather than a connection for me, marked by a sense of detachment that makes each recitation feel hollow. I often find myself standing before the hospital chapel, seeking solace, yet leaving feeling just as lost as before. And then there are the nights I lie awake, wrestling with thoughts of doubt and frustration, questioning whether the teachings I've devoted my life to are truly reflective of the divine truth, or merely instruments of a hidden agenda that perpetuates societal deception. One fateful night, everything changed. After a grueling shift, as I laid down to rest, I was suddenly enveloped in an unexpected darkness. In that moment, I felt as if my spirit had been pulled from my body, thrust into an ethereal realm. It was disorienting yet oddly liberating. Then came the light, a blinding radiance that filled my senses, and from that light emerged the figure of Jesus. His presence enveloped me with an overwhelming love that I had never known. "Ibrahim," he called softly, and his voice resonated with authority, shaking me to my core. In that moment, all my fears and insecurities faded away, replaced by an urgency to learn and understand. Jesus began to unveil truths that shattered the illusions I had held onto for far too long. He spoke of the spiritual war that rages within each of us and throughout the world. With every revelation, I witnessed the hidden agendas of the elite, how they manipulate our fears, keeping us shackled in ignorance and division. I was shown how spirituality can often be twisted into a means of control, deceiving even the most devoted. My heart raced as I absorbed the grim realities surrounding us. The wars ignited by political deceit, the societal divisions fueled by misinformation, and the suffering endured by those caught in the crossfire of this ongoing spiritual conflict. As I emerged from this divine encounter, I felt a renewed sense of purpose surge within me. I understood that my experience wasn't merely a personal awakening. It was a calling to enlighten others about the truth I had witnessed. Yet lingering in the back of my mind was the fear of backlash from my community and my family. How could I share this revelation without losing everything I held dear? The thought of being labeled a heretic loomed heavily over me, but the urgency to combat the deception and help others awaken was overpowering. I realized I had to confront these fears head-on, drawing strength from the message I had received. I was ready to step into the light and guide others to do the same, battling against the darkness that enveloped so many lives. As I stepped into the quietude of the early morning at the hospital, my thoughts were a whirlwind of conflict. My name is Ibrahim, and I am a doctor working in the ICU, a place filled with life yet shadowed by the ever-looming specter of death. Although I'm respected for my dedication to saving lives, there's a gnawing emptiness within me that I can no longer ignore. Each night, as I offer my nightly prayers, I find myself wrestling with an increasing sense of isolation. The words I once recited with conviction now feel like echoes in an empty chamber. It's as if I'm performing a ritual devoid of connection, longing for something deeper that eludes me. With each passing day, the echoes of my doubts grew louder, manifesting themselves in troubling dreams. I would awaken, drenched in sweat, haunted by the image of a mysterious figure, a presence that felt both inviting and intimidating. In my dreams, I could hear the figure calling my name, yet I could never quite see its face. This recurring vision left me unsettled, amplifying my spiritual turmoil. I began to question the very foundations of my faith. Was I merely adhering to tradition without truly understanding its essence? Were the teachings I respected being manipulated by a hidden agenda, crafted by the elite to maintain control over the faithful? Then came the night that changed everything. Following an exhausting shift, fatigue wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, and I slipped into a trance-like state during my prayers. In that ephemeral moment, darkness enveloped me, and I found myself in a surreal landscape devoid of form or time, a void leading to a blinding light. And there, standing radiantly before me, was Jesus. His warmth washed over me, an embrace of pure love and understanding that shattered the walls I had built around my heart. "Ibrahim," he said, and an inexplicable sense of recognition coursed through my veins. I felt as if time itself stood still, as he began to impart wisdom that would forever alter my perception of existence. In that divine moment, truths were revealed that sliced through layers of deception I hadn't even realized existed. Jesus explained the spiritual war we are all engaged in, highlighting the manipulation of beliefs that keep us bound in ignorance. He showed me visions of a world fractured by division, wars born from lies, societal structures designed to exploit our fears, and communities torn apart by manufactured conflict. The revelation was both terrifying and liberating. I understood that my own journey of faith could be used as a tool for awakening, not just for myself, but for countless others who felt trapped in confusion and despair. When I returned to consciousness, the stark reality of the hospital re-emerged around me, but everything had changed. The familiar sounds of beeping machines and whispered prayers now felt like a call to action. My experiences filled me with urgency. Urgency to share what I had witnessed, to guide others through the deception that clouded our collective understanding. I was more than just a doctor. I felt called to illuminate the truth and awaken others to their own journeys. Yet, lurking in the corners of my mind was the fear of rejection from my community and the potential loss of my family. But I understood that the path of truth would not be easy. I had to step into the light and confront the darkness, armed with the revelations that Jesus had entrusted to me. The fight for consciousness and clarity had just begun. The night shift had begun like any other, with the familiar sounds of monitors beeping and the soft rustling of nurses moving through the ICU. My name is Ibrahim, a doctor devoted to my patients in this demanding environment. I've spent years navigating the pressures of saving lives, but that night, everything would change. A tragic incident, a sudden cardiac arrest from a patient who had seemed stable, sent my world into a spiral. As I rushed to the bedside, I felt the overwhelming weight of responsibility intensifying within me. In that instant, every doubt and fear that had quietly accumulated in my heart surged to the surface. Amidst the chaos, as I fought to stabilize my patient, I suddenly felt a cold grip of darkness engulfing me. The room spun, and before I knew it, I slipped into unconsciousness. It was a disorienting plunge into a void that felt both terrifying and strangely liberating. In this dark expanse, I was confronted by the absence of sound and light. a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the ICU. But then, piercing through the darkness, an incredible light emerged. As it illuminated the void, I felt an inexplicable warmth, a wave of peace washing over me. This light was not just bright, it felt alive and aware. In the midst of that radiance stood Jesus, his presence commanding yet gentle. Ibrahim. He called my name, and that single word resonated through the very fabric of my being. Tears filled my eyes as I was enveloped in a compassion so pure, it seemed to heal every wound I carried. In that moment, I realized how profoundly loved I was, despite the turmoil in my heart. Jesus began to speak, revealing the intricate spiritual war surrounding not just my life, but the world at large. He showed me how the hidden agendas of the elite weave deception into our social fabric, creating barriers that keep us from seeing the truth. As his revelations unfolded, I witnessed a series of visions, wars fueled by lies, communities divided by fear, and souls trapped in cycles of despair due to manipulation. I could see how easily societies are led astray when they accept false narratives, often perpetuated by those in power. Jesus implored me to awaken, to recognize the battle for truth that we are all engaged in. The urgency of his message filled my chest with a sense of responsibility, compelling me to confront the reality of what I had previously accepted without question. I knew I couldn't return to my life and pretend that everything was the same. When I regained consciousness in the ICU, the lights felt harsh and artificial compared to the warmth of the divine encounter. My surroundings rushed back at me, but now they were tinged with a new understanding. As I resumed my duties, the reality of my profound experience weighed heavily on my heart. Each interaction with patients and their families became an opportunity to reflect on the truths I had been shown. I felt an insatiable urge to speak out, to share the awakening that had ignited a fire within me. The thought of doing so, however, sent waves of fear crashing through me. What if they rejected me? What if I lost everything I had built because of my newfound convictions? But the knowledge that I had witnessed the light and gained this insight propelled me to challenge the constraints that had long defined my life. The truths revealed to me weren't merely from my own understanding. They had the potential to liberate others as well. I began to devise a plan, a way to share my journey without putting my career or livelihood at risk. It felt like a spiritual war was underway, and my role in it was not just as a healer, but as a messenger of awakening. I knew that the path ahead would not be easy, filled with challenges and resistance, but the battle for truth, my truth, was a fight worth engaging in. It was time to step into this new reality and confront the darkness that deceives so many, armed with the light of revelation I had received from Jesus. Upon returning to consciousness, I was thrust back into the stark reality of the ICU. My name is Ibrahim, a 35-year-old doctor in New York, and I had just come back from an overwhelming experience that would forever alter my perception of faith and the world around me. The blinding light and the compassionate presence of Jesus loomed large in my memory, yet despite that profound encounter, I was painfully aware of the storm brewing within me. The moment I opened my eyes, I felt a dissonance between the revelations I had received and the beliefs I had held for so long. The reactions from my family and community soon came crashing down like a tidal wave. How could I share what had happened to me without facing their backlash? To them, I was a devout Muslim, someone who should adhere strictly to our beliefs, not one who questioned them or sought new paths. When I confided in my family, their faces hardened, the warmth replaced by a mixture of disappointment and concern. I could see it in their eyes. I was a traitor to our shared faith, a heretic who had strayed from the path set before me. Guilt wrapped around my heart tightly, and I was paralyzed by the fear of losing everything: my family, my identity, my sense of belonging. The internal struggle became unbearable. With every passing day, the tension within me grew, compounded by the weight of their expectations. I felt alone in my awakening, haunted by dreams that lingered, echoing the truths Jesus had revealed to me. I knew that the spiritual war fought around us extended into personal battles within our hearts. This war wasn't just about my journey. It was representative of countless others who felt similarly torn between tradition and genuine belief. In my quiet moments, I questioned whether I was strong enough to continue down this path, knowing the obstacles that lay ahead. Despite the fear of rejection, I felt compelled to explore the truth deeper. I began researching silently, diving into the Bible and watching testimonies of others whose lives had been transformed by their encounters with Jesus. Each story resonated with me, reinforcing the conviction that I was not alone. The urgency to speak about the hidden agendas of the elite, about the manipulation surrounding organized religion, grew within me like a flame that refused to be extinguished. I recognized the deception that held so many captive, and it fueled my determination to share the awakening I had experienced. In the shadows of my journey, I sought solace in the small community of individuals who shared similar experiences. Together, we challenged the long-standing traditions that sought to bind us while encouraging one another to embrace the truth of our awakenings. I found hope in the stories of others, understanding that this spiritual war was a collective battle. As I prepared to step fully into my new path, I held on to the belief that true liberation can blossom through suffering and transformation. The truth I had encountered was worth fighting for, no matter the personal cost. I was ready to confront the deception that surrounded us, to awaken others to the light of understanding that Jesus had shown me. In my quest for truth, I found myself diving deeper than I ever thought possible. My name is Ibrahim, and as a doctor in New York, I've always dedicated myself to helping others, yet I felt an emptiness growing within me. The moment I encountered Jesus during my near-death experience, everything I thought I understood about my faith was challenged. The love and revelations I received were so profound, yet those truths were now placed in stark contrast to the beliefs I held dearly for years. After that moment in the ICU, I knew I needed to seek answers beyond the limitations of my previous understandings. I began exploring the Bible in secret. Each page I turned was filled with wisdom that felt life-altering, resonating with the stirring awareness awakened in me by Jesus. I watched countless testimonies online, hearing stories from others whose lives had been transformed by their encounters with Him. Their experiences echoed my own, tales of awakening from deception, of stepping beyond the hidden agendas of the elite that often use faith as a mechanism of control. These stories comforted me. They reminded me that I was not alone in this exploration. Yet, with every revelation I uncovered, there existed a lurking fear that tightened its grip around my heart. Joining a small community of diverse individuals who also sought truth offered me solace. In their presence, I felt a sense of belonging that had escaped me for so long. Together, we shared discussions that ranged from profound spiritual insights to the practical struggles of living with newfound beliefs in a world filled with skepticism. The more I opened up about my doubts and the truths I'd discovered, the more I realized the urgency of our mission. We were all part of this spiritual war, each of us armed with pieces of the truth that could help illuminate the path for others. Still, even among this vibrant community, I felt the constant tug of my old life, the love for my family, the traditions and culture that shaped my identity, gnawing at me. The fear of abandoning my culture weighed heavily on my conscience. Would I be seen as a traitor to my family for pursuing these new beliefs? The thought of their disdain haunted me. I envisioned their faces, once filled with pride, now turned cold with disappointment. The internal conflict raged within me as I juggled the desire to embrace my spiritual awakening while longing for the acceptance of those I loved. It became increasingly clear that true liberation would come with risks that not everyone would understand or accept. Collecting insights and strength from my new community became a way to confront these fears. Together, we fortified our resolve to stand against deception, ready to awaken those still lost in the darkness. As I continued this journey, I felt Jesus' teachings becoming deeply rooted in my mind and spirit. The message of love, unity, and awakening began to resonate more profoundly than any tradition I had previously known. I understood that I was a vessel for change, committed to revealing the truths that would free so many, myself included, from the heavy chains of manipulation that had been woven into our lives. However, the shadows of my past were not easily cast aside, and the struggle against deception was only beginning. The urgency to act burned in my heart, and I knew the path ahead would require courage, not just for me, but for all those yearning to break free and find their true purpose in this spiritual war that touches us all. Realizing that my experience was not merely a personal revelation but a divine calling hit me hard as I laid in my hospital bed. My name is Ibrahim, and as a doctor in the heart of New York, I've spent my life plunging into the depths of human suffering and healing. Yet after my near-death encounter with Jesus, everything changed. I felt profoundly compelled to share the truths I had uncovered, not just for myself, but for others yearning for light in the darkness. The insights I had been privileged to witness were urgent, and I knew that remaining silent was no longer an option, even at the risk of losing everything I had built. In the days following my revelation, I felt a fire igniting in my spirit. Each moment spent in contemplation solidified my commitment to this path. I was filled with an overwhelming sense of duty to awaken those around me, to shine a light on the hidden agendas that pervaded both religion and society. I envisioned Jesus standing beside me, urging me to take action, to confront the deception that binds so many lives. But this was no easy task. I was already acutely aware of the backlash that could come from my family and friends, steeped in their own beliefs and traditions. Rejecting their understanding of faith could lead down a lonely road, yet the truth I had witnessed demanded to be revealed. As I navigated through my conflicting emotions, I immersed myself in the Bible, seeking deeper understanding. Each page opened up new layers of wisdom, further solidifying my faith and prompting me to confront the realities of the spiritual war that waged around us. In my studies, I encountered stories that mirrored what Jesus had shown me, tales of oppression and awakening, of individuals breaking free from the chains of manipulation. This was a battle larger than myself. It was about confronting the systems that perpetuate division and ignorance. It was terrifying yet exhilarating to realize that I wasn't just a passive observer, but an active participant in a movement for truth. The urgency to share my findings became palpable as the world outside continued to grow darker. I realized that my medical career could intersect with this mission, serving as a platform from which to reach others. I began talking to my colleagues, sharing the stories of awakening that inspired me. Some listened, intrigued, while others regarded me with skepticism, warning me about the dangers of straying too far from tradition. Every reaction only fueled my determination. Each conversation felt like a small victory against the overwhelming tide of complacency, despite the gnawing awareness of the risks I was taking. Despite the fear of rejection, my heart remained steadfast. I found solace in the small community I had developed, a group of fellow seekers passionate about awakening others to the truth. Together we would pray and share our experiences, each story reinforcing our collective purpose to challenge the status quo. Each session felt charged with hope, illuminating the path away from the deception that had ensnared so many. I understood that my mission was not simply to liberate my own soul, but to guide others through the spiritual war they might not even know they were fighting. In this place, I felt empowered, and I could finally see a glimmer of light breaking through the shadows, urging us all to stand for truth, love, and genuine understanding. Leaving my home felt like stepping into the unknown, a symbolic crossing of boundaries that both excited and terrified me. My name is Ibrahim, a 35-year-old doctor who has spent years caring for others in the bustling environment of New York's ICU. Yet, the moment I encountered Jesus during my near-death experience, everything shifted for me. No longer could I ignore the silent cries of my spirit yearning for liberation from the constraints of societal expectations and hidden agendas. With each step away from my past, I felt the weight of tradition lifting, replaced by an exhilarating sense of freedom I hadn't dared to imagine before. As I walked through the city streets, The sounds of life surrounded me, but I felt profoundly altered. The people I passed, with their worries and hopes, reminded me of the myriad souls entangled in the same spiritual war one had experienced. I knew I had a mission now, not just to find my path, but to guide others toward their own awakening. Jesus had shared revelations with me, truths that exposed the deceptions woven by the elite, who manipulate faith and sow division for their gain. But how could I convey this truth to the very community that might see me as a betrayer? The fear of backlash loomed daily, but I felt compelled to confront this fear head-on. I began finding solace in late-night discussions with others who had also awakened to deeper truths. The small group formed in the shadows, far removed from those who would judge us. They shared their struggles, speaking of their journeys away from traditional constraints, and each story reinforced my commitment to this cause. Together, we planned ways to spread our message of awakening, ways to encourage those held captive by doubt and fear to pursue the truth. As I shared my own testimony, I felt the power of our collective experiences, the weight of understanding that we were all players in a larger narrative. The spiritual war was not just my battle. It was a shared struggle against the forces that sought to keep us blind to the light. The urgency of our mission became palpable. With every conversation, the stakes seemed to rise. I envisioned a future where individuals could embrace their faith without fear of manipulation or control. In those moments, I realized that true liberation sometimes requires grappling with pain, but it is through that pain that we can find transformation. Still, the memory of my family haunted me. I carried the weight of their expectations and the love I still felt for them. I longed for their understanding and hoped for a day when I could bridge the gap between my awakening and their unwavering beliefs. The thought of alienating them was a constant worry, yet I knew I had to be true to myself. It felt like walking a tightrope, balancing my new understanding of truth while holding on to the threads of the past. But with each step, the vision of a world free from the chains of deception became clearer. A world where all could experience the profound love and awakening Jesus had shown me. I was ready to be a beacon of that truth. Years have passed since that life-altering encounter with Jesus in the ICU, and my mission now feels more urgent than ever. My name is Ibrahim, and the transformation I experienced has reshaped not just my beliefs but also my very purpose. I dedicate my life to sharing the truths I've uncovered, striving to help others navigate the spiritual war that rages within and around us. Each day, I witness pain and suffering in the hospital, a constant reminder of the battle against the hidden agendas that seek to control us through deception. The elite thrive on the ignorance of the masses, and I cannot stand idly by as lives hang in the balance. In my journey, I've become an advocate for those seeking liberation from the confines of tradition and manipulation. My own awakening fuels a desire to shine a light on the realities that so many overlook. I've embraced my role as a healer not just of bodies but of souls, recognizing that physical ailments often stem from spiritual unrest. I engage with my patients on a deeper level, addressing their fears and uncertainties, drawing upon the wisdom imparted to me during my near-death experience. Each conversation becomes an opportunity to provoke thought and encourage others to question their beliefs and the truths they've been told. Yet, as I share my story, I face ongoing challenges. The fear of backlash from my family and community continues to loom over me like a shadow. I understand the depth of their adherence to tradition, and I can only imagine the pain my change brings to them. I desperately hope for reconciliation, to bridge the gap that lies between my awakening and their understanding. It's a constant struggle, balancing the need for authenticity with the risk of ostracism. My faith teaches compassion and understanding, yet the fear of being labeled a traitor lingers in my mind. Every day in my new life is a lesson in resilience. I often attend gatherings with a supportive community of fellow seekers who faced similar dilemmas. Together, we share our moments of clarity and despair, reinforcing the connections that bind us in our shared pursuit of truth. These relationships have become my lifeline, affirming that I'm not alone in this spiritual war. We challenge one another to look beyond the facade of comfort that societal norms provide, urging each other to embrace the awakening that lies beyond the boundaries of fear. Through it all, I remain steadfast in my commitment to uncovering the truth. My conversations have extended beyond the hospital walls, reaching out to those hungry for spiritual understanding. I know that speaking out can catalyze awakening, igniting the flame of awareness that has been dimmed for far too long. With each encounter, I strive to share the profound revelation that Jesus gifted me, the understanding that true spirituality transcends tradition and empowers us to break free from the shackles of deception and fear. The journey ahead is fraught with obstacles, but the fight for light in the spiritual war is one I am more than willing to undertake, regardless of the consequences. For years, I navigated the demanding world of medicine, serving as a doctor in the bustling environment of New York City. My name is Ibrahim, and while I was respected for my commitment to healing, I carried an increasing sense of emptiness within me. The weight of my responsibilities and the expectation to always be strong began to press down on my spirit. During the quieter moments in the ICU, I found myself grappling with profound questions about faith and my very purpose. Every time I offered my prayers, I felt the words slip through my fingers, leaving me with an unsettling void, a creeping realization that something was fundamentally amiss. It was during one of those intense shifts, struggling to cope with the relentless pressure, that everything changed. A tragic incident occurred to a patient I had grown fond of, a sudden cardiac arrest. As I worked frantically to save their life, the world around me began to fade. I collapsed, and in what felt like a heartbeat, I was transported into a dark void. The sensation was disconcerting, but then a brilliant light pierced through the darkness, and in that moment, standing before me was Jesus. His presence was overwhelming. I felt a rush of love and understanding enveloping me. "Ibrahim," he called, and in that single word, everything I had known began to unravel. Jesus spoke to me of the truths hidden beneath the surface of our mundane lives. He revealed the spiritual war that we all fight daily, the manipulation by the elite who craft narratives designed to keep us divided. I witnessed how fear and deception have infiltrated our societies, sabotaging our ability to unite and fostering division amongst us. The images flashed through my mind. Wars waged not just abroad, but in the hearts of individuals, communities torn by ignorance, all while the elite profit from our suffering. Each revelation stirred something deep within me, awakening a desire to shatter the chains that had long bound my faith and my understanding of the world. As I returned to consciousness, the sterile environment of the ICU felt unbearably heavy. I was filled with a sense of urgency. My experience was not merely a personal awakening, but a calling to share these insights with the world. The gravity of what I had witnessed weighed on my heart, and I knew the path I was on would not come without sacrifice. The fear of confronting my community, of appearing as a traitor to my faith, loomed large. How could I express these truths to those still wrapped in the comforting illusion of traditional beliefs? Yet, the truth was undeniable, and I felt an overwhelming need to confront the deception that kept us all shackled. In the days that followed, I found myself delving deeper into the teachings of Jesus and the life-altering messages of love and liberation. I began to connect with others who had faced similar journeys, forming a community united by our shared experiences. Together, we engaged in discussions that challenged the status quo, debating the narratives that had shaped our lives for so long. Each encounter reinforced my resolve, bolstering my belief that the awakening I experienced must be shared, even amidst the risks. I felt empowered to join the fight against the spiritual war that affects us all, ready to stand against the deception that has strayed so many from the truth. This journey was only just beginning, and the path ahead promised both challenges and tremendous potential for healing and transformation. As I stand on the brink of this new reality, I'm left with lingering questions. Have you ever felt a profound disconnection from the beliefs you were raised with? Or perhaps experienced that haunting moment when everything you thought you knew came crashing down? My name is Ibrahim, and through my encounter with Jesus in the ICU, I discovered that our lives are not merely dictated by tradition, but rather intertwined in a vast spiritual war, one in which every soul has a role to play. The truths that have been revealed to me are not just personal, they're collective and urgent. We live in a world riddled with deception, kept in check by systems designed to manipulate our understanding of faith and truth. But I cannot deny the responsibility I feel to awaken others. This is your call to action as well. Are you ready to confront the chains that bind you? To ask the uncomfortable questions? Your journey might begin right here, in a reflection on your own experiences. What hidden truths have you unearthed in your struggles? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to understand your journey. If this resonates with you, I urge you to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and activate the notifications. Each video we share delves deeper into the revelations awaiting us, the stories that can shed light on the shadows we navigate daily. It is vital that we unite in the pursuit of truth, for only together can we change the narrative set against us. In our next video, prepare to hear another powerful account from someone who found Jesus in a dream that shattered everything they thought they knew. This journey of awakening is one we must walk together, hand in hand, ready to face the truth that unites us all. Thank you for being part of this important conversation. I'm Ibrahim, and I deeply appreciate you sharing this time with me. Remember, together we can uncover the truth that lies just beyond the veil. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep seeking the light.